Hello there, it's Simone. Today I would like to look at the pens that I had inked in February and see how those pairings worked out. This is my ink rotation report for February 2023. And I hope to, in the future, do those a little bit earlier so that I don't have the currently inked and the ink rotation report like right at the same time. But we will see how that is going to work out. In February, I had 10 pens inked. Most of them I started using between January 23 and the 26th. These two I inked on January 7th when I met up with friends that gave me some ink samples or brought inks that they thought should go in specific pens. Yeah, so these have been in my lineup since then, since January 7th. These I have been using since the almost end of January. I used all of these pens at least twice in my journal. That is just a place, a notebook where I do long form journaling. I just write in there, and every time I use it, I use a different pen. And so I then, after I'm done with the journal entry, I log that in here in this ink log. This is a Hobonichi Weeks. And then I just write what pen I used for that entry and how I felt about the writing experience. Sometimes it's a different writing experience. Sometimes it's basically the same and I'm repeating myself over and over again. But that just goes to show that maybe I have just found a really great combination. But I don't just use my fountain pens for journaling in long form writing. I also use my fountain pens. Well, that's one major part of it. The other major part is journaling. And the paper that I use there are different types. I recently used mostly the Aerofoil paper, 52 GSM Tomoe River paper, as well as live letter writing paper. I think I switched up my camera, and the lens is over here. Need to move a little bit over to this side because I feel like I'm over on this left edge. Okay, I do not document what inks and pens I use when I write a letter because I just, when I write a letter, maybe I use 4 different fountain pens. And I do write it in the letter that I sent out, but I don't keep a copy of that. And so it's just what it is. I'm not that, I feel like this is almost super nerdy, geeky, whatever. But the other thing, like documenting what inks and pens I used in the letters, would just take it that notch further that I'm probably not willing to take. So it's okay. That is how I enjoy my fountain pen hobby at the moment, and so that's how it works. Here are the pens. Let's go through them one by one. If you've been following me, then you know that I have been using notebooks, 3 different types of notebooks, to document what inks and pens I have currently inked. And then sometime in 2022, May, I decided that I wanted to I was greatly inspired, followed Chris Saines's evaluation method, or I was inspired by it because it's not the same, to document how I liked these pens. I used pluses and minuses, and I never had some sort of point system or a grading system because I still can't. Maybe that's something that evolves over time. Pinpoint like, you know, if I give a pen, I give it 0 to 10 points. So what is 8? Is 8 the size, what points do I dodge to receive an 8? It's always all the time that is kind of an intuition thing. In January, I tried to go with a number grading system that was inspired by Gregory of Pensane, but when I was making that video, I realized that I don't really have a reference to like what experience equals what number. And then I watched some more videos. Let me just mention Brittany, Mary, and Karina, who all evaluated their pens and under different criteria. So this month I decided to step away from the points again. This is how I set it up. I will be ranking my pens. I had that idea earlier, so I'm not gonna give them a number. I'm just gonna rank them, and I had 10 pens, so I will have 10 spots, and I will tell you what I felt about them, and then we will see what happens. For this rotation, I wanted to use all the gold nibbed fountain pens that I own. That were our 6, and then that left these 2. I wanted to ink up my birthday pen, and then this one I acquired in December but did not ink up in January. So that I wanted to include and experience and just get a feel for this pen as well. That made it 10 pens, 6 gold nibbed, 4 steel nib pens. I'm gonna talk about them in this order, and then we will see what number grade or what place they will be in. So this is the Pilot Custom 74 with a medium nib, 14 karat gold medium nib. The ink that I had in here is Diamine Winter Spice. This nib is really great. I had a little bit of an adjusting period when I first got it, but ever since I really let myself experience it a little bit more, I loved it more and more. It is more on the smaller side of pens. Well, I don't really know if that's true, but in my hand, it barely goes beyond this point. The section is okay. It is medium to lightweight. The converter is like the crappiest converter I have ever used. I tried this time just to use it like a, is this a vacuum fill? You push it down and then, yeah, the ink will be sucked in here. It's basically this system, the same system. There is some kind of bouncy thing in the back here, and you push this knob down and then the ink will get sucked in when you release. I don't really have very much success using this method. There is not a lot of ink left in this converter. I have refilled this once since I started inking this pen, and it looks like, as you can see, there is some ink on this as well. Like there is some kind of spillage, but I also have to say that I took all of my pens with me when I went on a 6-day vacation. I flew, so maybe that is the reason why. I am not 100% sure. But what else? It is a great nib. It is medium size. I can really write very smoothly with this. There's never ever an issue with this. It is smooth. Smooth, reliable, and never disappoints. It did not have any problems with this ink. It is a shimmer ink and a sheening ink. The ink was wet throughout. I never had any hard starts. However, the shimmer was not evenly distributed when I used it. I try to agitate the ink in the ink bottle when I filled this, because I really wanted to use this shimmered. So I'm not sure if it's the feed or if I'm not agitating this enough, or maybe, as you can see, there is not a lot of ink. Can you see? There is not a lot of ink in this converter, so maybe it's just not enough of a fill to have an evenly distribution of shimmer. That could be too. I will fill this pen from now on with a syringe, or at least this converter. I might also just go to the Con 40, which has a smaller ink capacity, but if I get more ink into that than with this one, then maybe it's worth just switching. So yes, I liked it. On the 68 GSM, it's great. On the 52 GSM, it's almost too smooth and too glassy. What else? I started to reuse my ink journal. I would love to, in the future months, explore every ink that I have in a pen, so that I can just have more information about the ink that I'm using. And what I have to tell you about this ink, it's brown. Did you know this? For some reason, I haven't ever really thought about the base color of this ink, and I was so surprised when I saw that it was a brown ink. For this writing experience right here, I thought that I really loved this ink in this pen, and I was super surprised that I liked this ink so much, because when I swatched it when I opened all the ink vents in 2021, I did not see the potential or that I would like it so much as I do right now. What I really like is that it's not as sheeny as it appears, or maybe the pen just puts down enough ink so that it doesn't have it's not overpowered by the sheen or the shimmer, which both is really, really great. So that was this pen. I'll just put it here, and then I'll put it in the specific order that I had them in. The next pen that I had inked was the Pilot E95S with another medium 14K gold nib. And even though they're both Pilot nibs, this one is different in the shape. And what I really love about this pocket pen is that there is no designated piston section. So I can grab it here, I can grab it down here, and that is something that I really enjoy. This pen, again, same thing as with this one. There's no hard starts. It wrote every time I used it. It lays down an amazing amount of ink. It's wet and bright. Let's talk about the ink. So this was one of the inks from the January 2023 Ink Flight box. And when I swatched that ink, I was taken aback is taking it a bit too far, but I was quite flashed by the orangey of this ink. And I wasn't sure if I would ever going to use this. And so instead of I wanted to have a color like this in my color palette for February. And so I decided, well, why don't I just challenge myself to use this and see how it goes? It is quite an experience. You can see that when you use different dip pens, then it's even brighter. It's leaning more towards red for sure, but it is just a regular orange ink. It had a very wet flow in this pen. It created some nice shading, but it wasn't anything to write home about. Sometimes it felt like the feet couldn't keep up with the flow of the ink. But I have to say that when I wrote a page in my writing journal, it was almost too much, too bright, too something. I would get like, ugh. So I haven't really gone back to look at those entries because they're just like really bright, really overpowering. And so, yeah. However, the ink does have nice properties for sure, as you can clearly see. Maybe, no. Then let me talk about the next one was the Twsbi Go Clear with a medium nib. This is the first steel nib in this lineup. And I said it on a past video, I think, where I said that I couldn't really feel a difference between gold nibs and steel nibs. I think I can now. This is stiff. It's still a very reliable pen. I felt that it's stiffer, but it did not clog. It did not have any hard starts. It wrote really wet. The shimmer in this ink was so evenly distributed all the time. It's such a lovely color. I'm just so in awe. This is a yellow base color, and I think that the shimmer makes it appear to be a tiny bit brown. There is maybe some hints of blue. There's yellow, tiny bit of orange in here. There's no shimmer in this because I dipped nibs in there and I didn't agitate the bottle every time. But if you want to look over here, there in the writing with the pen, there is shimmer all over, and it's greatly distributed. And I just love this. Great shimmer. So that's this pen. Another success, but definitely noticed the stiffer nib. And I didn't think I would be able to. So that was a surprise, and that goes through this whole lineup for sure. Then this is definitely one of those pen and ink combinations that aren't the best. So I know, or everybody tells you when you watch videos about the Platinum 3776 that it has a very pencil-like feeling, that it's not as smooth and soft as the Pilot nibs, which is absolutely true. Still, to me, I have a great writing experience with it, with every ink that I have put in so far. However, this time around, I did not. It was super feedbacky. It was the only time that I felt like it was okay to write on was on the 52 GSM Tomoe River paper. I did not have a great experience in my writing journal. I did not have a great experience on, I am using Stalogy paper for my video notes. It just wasn't doing it for me. And I think that was not because of this pen, because I knew what this pen feels like. It was because the ink was just too dry for this nib and feet. So, too dry. However, let me show you the color, which definitely gives this ink, this pen, a tiny notch, or this combination, a tiny notch up. Look at this complex color. Well, I don't know if it's complex. It's in my wheelhouse of these inks. It's similar to Rohre and Klingner Altgoldgrün. I feel like it's leaning a little bit more towards yellow. It has nice shading. Especially look at the Kakimori nib. Look at the different colors that I was able to get out of this with these different nibs. Yes, this probably would do better in a wetter pen. I might give it another try in another pen, because definitely I love this color. Definitely not in this pen, no. So too dry. Then we have another basic standard pen. Let me turn my page because I actually took notes this time. This is a Twsbi Eco. Again, this has a nice wet flow this time, so it's wet. It's a standard everyday writer, nothing special, wet and lovely shading. The ink that is in here is, I think, the most interesting thing about this combination right now, which is totally allowed. It doesn't have to be special and special times 3. This ink is wet. Not as wet as other inks in this lineup, or the way that I determine wetness when I'm using dip pens is how well it sticks to my brass dip nib. I just dip it in the ink. I make sure that I don't have too much excess of ink on my nib, and then I place it down and start writing. And then some inks, let's just like release it all onto the page. And I can show you an example, this one right here. Look at the different line variations with the same dip nib. Yeah, here you can see that too. So it is a wet ink, but I think it's not as wet as Birmingham Pen Co. Boysenberry. I have the feeling that Birmingham Pen Co. inks are generally more on the wet side. But if you have more experience, I have only used 2 of their inks, I think, so far. So I can't really speak to that. But from these 2 inks that I have used, they're both rather wet. But what I love about this is that it's technically a teal ink, blue-green. But I think it is rather, well, complex doesn't really say anything. It's a little bit gray, moves through some turquoisey to the blues, which you can see right here. It feels very interesting. There's tension. It's not boring. It's not a boring ink. That's what I'm trying to say. So that is what gives this pen and ink combination maybe an upward notch. Then the next pen that we have here is the Bennu Euphoria, and this was my birthday pen. So if you've watched my video on my first impressions on this pen, it wasn't great. I have since absolutely taken every single word that I said about this pen back. That was basically just user error on my part with the ink not flowing well. I did not let the ink saturate the feed well enough. The next day that I used it, it wrote perfectly. I think I also said that these were Bock nibs. They are Schmidt nibs. So if you were confused by that, that is what this nib is. It was scratchy in the beginning. I was able to get that, to smooth that out really easily. This is how it should be. You know that I'm not a user of, like, I don't use every pen every single day. So my pens, if they work for me, that means, or if I judge a pen by how well it writes when I let it sit for a week and don't touch it. And if it writes well when I uncap it and put the pen to paper, that is definitely a criteria that I judge these pens by. And all of those pens so far in this lineup this month have been like that, which is amazing. Did you see how amazingly wet this flowed? It's smooth. It's super comfortable. It has a very, very wet feed. The ink is just, I'm not sure if I'm just so amazed by this ink because the first time I used this, the writing experience was just so bad. That could be, but I love the shading. I heard somebody else say that this is a wet ink. I cannot speak to that because this is also supposed to be a wet pen. So maybe it is amplifying the wetness, or I would have to use this in another pen. Sadly, this is all I have left. Like, this is all I have left of this sample. But I am really, really strongly considering purchasing a bottle of this ink. Yeah, I said it. There is definitely 2 bottle-worthy inks in this lineup. I'll tell you what that one is. This one is, even though it is a steel nib, and I now can feel the difference, and it's not that I don't enjoy the writing experience, but I definitely feel less strain on my arm when I use a gold nib. Shading and smooth. Wow, I can't write anymore. So this is great too. See, that's the thing. This is great, this is great, this is great, this is great, this is great. This is not great. How am I going to judge those? Did I show you the ink? Oh, I didn't. This ink is the only one that I did not make an ink journal entry for. I'm thinking about using this until its last second, or when I decide to unink it, and then use the last drops that are in here to create an entry for here. Or I actually really decide to get an ink bottle, then I can get that in the notebook once I have the new bottle. The Pilot Vanishing Point has I replaced the nib unit last summer in August 2022. I have now a gold nib unit in here, still a medium nib, but this, compared to the other 2 gold nibs that I have on the Pilot pens, this one is a 18 karat nib. And wow, is this bouncy. So after I had replaced the nib unit, I put an ink in there, and it was an okay experience. But listening to maybe Miss Marilyn Darling, could be, saying that I should really, really try a Pilot Iroshizuku ink in the Pilot Vanishing Point, made all the difference. I chose Konpeki, and this is a bright color as well, but it's not as overpowering. It's just perfect, bright, cheery. And this nib is just so appealing. And now it's getting darker. Why? And lovely. It's bouncy. It's just perfect. So, oh my goodness, this was such a great experience. So then Konpeki is also in here. This one. Yeah, it's bright, but it's not the overpowering experience that I had on the orange color. It is definitely, I think, of all the bright inks I have here, or the lighter inks, the one that stand out, these two are definitely the ones that are the brightest. So, and also, if this looks more like a royal blue, it is not. It's leaning toward, is it cerulean? Cyan. It's that pretty blue cyan color that you have in your watercolor palette. Then another new pen that I had in my lineup for February is this Pilot Custom Heritage 92. Thank you everyone for letting me know that the Heritage means it has flat tops, flat finials, and this piston knob is flat. This is the same nib as on the Pilot Custom 74. It is in size. It has a fine medium nib, and let me just tell you that this is the perfect nib. It is just that smidgen narrower than the medium nib that makes it enjoyable on both the 68 GSM, but also on the 52 GSM. Smooth. I mean, I write that with everyone. Smooth, and the shimmer. This is a shimmer ink. Did you know? Shimmer distribution is amazing. So this is basically a blue-black ink. Nothing to write home about again. But when you write home about this ink, it has shimmer. And this ink and this shimmer in this pen was really, it was just ever so subtle, but when you look at it from the right angle with the right lighting, you can see that it is there everywhere. And it just makes this relatively boring blue-black ink so much more enticing. Wow. Now, let's talk about the pen. As you know, and as you see, I really love changing out inks. So a piston filling pen, if I think about it now, if I had thought about it before, maybe I wouldn't even have purchased this pen. A piston filling pen isn't really something that I like using. I mean, I like the filling mechanism. I can get ink into this. I can clean this, but the ink capacity is not really needed. Oh, wow. Can you see that? Is there ink in there or what? The ink capacity isn't really needed because I change out my ink. So I usually just not fill the whole chamber. So then you would ask, why does she need piston filling pens? Yeah, I probably, if the swipe would be much nicer to get, I would get that instead of this, because I don't really need that much of an ink capacity. If it looked that maybe. So that's one point that I would dodge from here, because it's a piston filler, but I mean the pen can't really do anything about it because I made the purchase decision. And then I don't know if you can see this here, there is ink in between the inner cap and the outer cap, same back here, and I'd rather not see this. So I really don't care if there's ink, but now that I can see it, it bugs me. And so I haven't really found a way how to clean this properly. I'm thinking about getting an ultrasonic cleaner. Like, if you have one and it can clean this out, please leave a comment below. That will definitely help me making that purchase decision. I'm not going to get it right now, but it's definitely something I think about. And then also, what is this? Like, is this really ink, and why did it get there? Is it because I flew with it? Why? Why is this happening? So, Then this second to last. I don't know if you can see what my problem might be with this ink. Illegible is the only word that I can think of. It flows nicely out of the pen, but it's like, is it even there? We don't really know. So I did have a good experience with this. That's what surprised me so much. So I used this in my writing journal, and it is white with dot grid. And the 68 GSM, maybe it's because there is more feedback from the paper, so it maybe drew more ink. That writing is legible there, and I can see it. It's still not as wet as other inks, so it's a little on the drier side. It's wet enough to use, but every other paper that I tried it on, it was just disappointing. And then the last one is the Lamy All-Star Bronze. That was a white elephant gift. The ink is complex. Maybe that's a good word. And it's wet. And if you heard, it's still scratchy, so I wasn't able to fix all of this. Let me show you the boysenberry one more time. Did I show you the little Robinia? That was the first ink that I, it's a little bit more pink. There's more magenta in this. You can see it right up here. Yeah, it's basically illegible. Maybe if I had chosen a different pen with this, but I'm not even sure I would enjoy this in a broader nib. It would have to be wet and broad to make up for this light of an ink. Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't have time for that. So, ugh, not my thing. So the last ink was the boysenberry. And look at the bright, this is actually coral colored here, and then this is very turquoisey. Yeah, it's wet. I think it's so wet, as you can see, like it just gushed onto the paper when I used the Kakimori brass dip pen. I think it's so wet that it makes up for the dry, or in my experience, these Lamys are rather dry writers. So I think that's why this was such a good combination, because if you had a wet pen in this ink, it probably would look more like this. And I don't personally enjoy this. So yeah, but then it's a standard pen. It writes nothing to write home about. So let me, what do you think is the order that I put them in? So I'm going to start with these two. And then this one is here for sure. What else? The Pilot Custom Heritage 92 is more on this side. Then I have the Bennu. I think I would put here. The Twsbi Eco, I think I'll put right here. The Platinum 3776 I'll put right here. That leaves me with this one, and this one, and this one. So I have put this pen onto the first spot. This is the only pen that I have used 3 times in my journal. I just I feel compelled to use this, and it's just such a nice toy. Perfect. This, I think, is a combination of that. This is before the other gold nibs is something, but this is definitely just so nice and so comfortable. This one and this one are both on 3rd place. So the fact that this has just a medium nib, or has the stupid Con 70 converter and the medium nib, puts it on 3rd place with this, because this one didn't pass it because of the translucent body, as well as the stupid behind the leakage, the ink in areas where it doesn't belong. This has 5th place because of the amazing shimmer distribution. This one is in 6th place because it's just, I love that I don't have to grip it at a specific place. This is in 7th place then, because of the amazing ink that is in there and just the consistent writing experience with this pen. That's why this is in 8th place, because it's still a little bit scratchy in some when I hold it at specific angles. This one is in spot number 9 because of the unfortunate ink and pen combination. And then this one is on last place because you know why. So, in conclusion, I think this is how I'm going to move forward. It was really great thinking about it and then just ranking them and putting them into different spots. Because this is definitely how I gravitated towards them when I picked a pen for journaling. I would think, oh, what pen am I using? Well, you used it already 3 times. Don't you think you should use another pen? That's how this ranking came in. And then I made sure that I used this and experienced it. But ever since I used it twice, I'm like, well, okay, not really. And so I will be uninking this and this. There's not a lot of ink in this left, so I'm not even sure if it makes sense. Let me see. If it makes sense to keep it around. I am going to try and pare down my pens to 6 pens for March, because I have this amazing new Estabrook pen cup that holds 6 pens comfortably. It's made for 6. So that's the goal. If there will slip in a 7th, I think that can handle it, but more is probably too much. I feel like I should keep on using this one and just use it until this ink is gone. I'm really partial about these two. So this one is almost empty. This one is almost empty. I think this one is almost empty as well. Yeah. So yeah, there's basically nothing left in here. So this one I think I'm going to be done with when I start my new ink rotation, maybe in the second week of March. So, and then I have this one left where you can see, well, that's not a lot of ink. So it feels like I'm keeping this one for sure. I don't know if I want to keep these on. I inked them in January, so this one is almost empty too. So maybe I'll just keep it until it's done. Yeah, there's a quarter of a converter left. There is lots of ink in this. So maybe I'll keep it on. Maybe I'll write this dry. Maybe I can get it down to empty. So I have 3 that I might be moving on. All of the others are almost empty. Maybe I'll empty them before the round is up, which don't have a set date for this. So yeah, I really want to dig out some pens that I'm not 100% sure about using or keeping on. I don't want to keep pens that I don't 100% love. Especially those that are more on the pricier point, more expensive price point, because first of all, it's not fair to the pen Second of all, I could use something, if I sell them, I could do something else with the money. And thirdly, I could free funds for other pens that bring me more joy. Yeah, so I have 3 of those in my next lineup, and if I only want to have 6 pens and I move forward 2, that's it. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you soon. Until then, goodbye.